Sometimes the most broken people find each other in the darkest places. The rain hammered Newark's cracked streets like bullets that October night, turning the alley behind Rosie's tavern into a river of oil and regret. Maya Chen was dragging trash bags through the downpour when she heard it, a soft whimpering coming from inside the dumpster, barely audible above the storm. What she found changed everything. A tiny girl with matted blonde hair, shivering in an oversized leather jacket marked with a skull and crossbones, clutching a teddy bear stained with something dark. Maya had spent years serving whiskey to broken men and keeping her head down, but this child's terrified eyes shattered every wall she'd built around her heart. She had no idea that bringing Luna inside would put her directly in the crosshairs of the Death's Head Motorcycle Club, or that the little girl's father would turn out to be the most feared man in 3 states. When Tank Volkov's Harley roared into the parking lot 12 hours later, Maya expected death. Instead, she witnessed something impossible, a killer brought to his knees by love for his daughter. But what secrets was Luna too frightened to speak, and why were dangerous men willing to die to silence her forever? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maya's hands shook as she carried the trembling child through the tavern's back door, her sneakers squelching against the rain-soaked linoleum. The bar was mercifully empty except for Eddie, the night regular who'd passed out face first in his whiskey an hour ago. The overhead lights buzzed and flickered, casting sickly yellow shadows across the scarred wooden tables and torn vinyl booths that had seen better decades. The little girl hadn't spoken a word, just pressed herself against Maya's shoulder like she was trying to disappear. Up close, Maya could see the dried blood wasn't just on the teddy bear. It spattered the child's pale cheek in tiny droplets, and her small hands were scraped raw. The leather jacket hung off her tiny frame like a shroud, the Death's Head patch glaring at Maya with hollow eye sockets. Maya had heard whispers about the Death's Head MC. Everyone in this part of Newark had. They controlled half the drug trade from here to Atlantic City, and their president was a ghost story parents used to keep kids in line. Cross the Death's Head, and Tank Volkov will make you disappear. Maya had served plenty of bikers over the years. They tipped in crumpled 20s and never caused trouble at Rosie's. But she'd never seen this particular patch before. "Hey, sweetheart," Maya whispered, setting the girl down on the bar's cracked leather stool. "I'm Maya. You're safe now, okay?" The child's enormous blue eyes tracked Maya's movements, but she remained silent, clutching the blood-stained bear tighter. Maya's heart clenched. She'd seen that look before, in her own reflection after her father's fists, in her mother's face after the cancer diagnosis, in every person who'd learned that safety was just an illusion for people like them. Maya grabbed a clean bar towel and dampened it with warm water from behind the bar. "Let's get you cleaned up, baby, then we'll find you something to eat." As she gently wiped the blood from the girl's face, Maya's mind raced. She should call the police. That was the responsible thing, the safe thing. But she'd grown up in foster care before aging out at 18, and she knew how the system chewed up kids who'd already been through hell. Besides, the cops in this neighborhood had their own arrangements with the motorcycle clubs. Getting them involved might make things worse. The girl, Luna, Maya decided to call her, after the crescent-shaped scar above her left eyebrow, submitted to the cleaning without resistance. Maya heated up leftover soup from the kitchen, cutting the vegetables smaller and blowing on each spoonful before offering it. Luna ate mechanically, like a small robot programmed for survival. "Your jacket's pretty big on you," Maya said conversationally, trying to coax out any response. "Did someone give it to you?" Luna's grip tightened on the teddy bear, but she didn't answer. Maya tried again. "What's your bear's name?" This time, Luna's lower lip trembled almost imperceptibly, and Maya's chest tightened. Whatever this child had witnessed, it had stolen her voice. The tavern's ancient radiator clanked to life, and Luna flinched at the sound. Maya made a mental note of every reaction, every trigger. She'd been a frightened kid once too, learning to read danger in every shadow and sound. "Tell you what," Maya said, sliding off her own zip-up hoodie, "why don't we put this on instead? Your jacket's soaking wet." As Maya helped Luna out of the leather jacket, she caught sight of something that made her blood run cold. Stitched inside the collar in small, careful letters was a name, Luna Volkov. The soup spoon slipped from Maya's fingers and clattered against the bowl. This wasn't just any Death's Head kid. This was Tank Volkov's daughter. Maya had never seen Tank in person, but his reputation painted him as something between a demon and a force of nature. 6'4" of scarred muscle and controlled violence, they said. The kind of man who could kill you with his bare hands and sleep peacefully afterward. And somehow, his 4-year-old daughter had ended up traumatized and alone in Maya's dumpster. Maya's first instinct was to run, pack Luna into her beat-up Honda, and drive until they hit another state, maybe another coast. But as she looked at the little girl methodically spooning soup into her mouth with the focused intensity of someone who'd learned not to waste food, Maya felt something shift inside her chest. She thought of her mother, lying in the hospital bed 3 miles away, tubes snaking from her arms while the medical bills piled higher each month. Maya had been invisible her whole life, the quiet foster kid, the forgettable waitress, the daughter who couldn't afford, the treatment that might save the only family she had left. Nobody had ever needed her. Not really. But this broken little girl needed someone, and Maya was all she had. Luna finished her soup and looked up at Maya with those huge, haunted eyes. For the first time in hours, her grip on the teddy bear loosened slightly. Maya made her choice. "Come on, sweetheart," she said softly. "Let's get you a bath and somewhere warm to sleep. Tomorrow we'll figure out the rest." She had no idea that tomorrow would come sooner than expected, announced by the roar of a Harley-Davidson and the promise of violence. Maya carried Luna up the narrow staircase behind the bar, each step creaking under their combined weight. The wooden banister wobbled in her grip, another repair Rosie had been promising to make for 3 years running. The familiar sounds of her ordinary world felt different now with Luna in her arms, the dripping faucet in the bar below that drove customers crazy, Eddie's drunken snores echoing off the empty walls, the hum of the ancient neon sign that advertised Budweiser to a street that had given up caring. Her apartment above Rosie's tavern was a testament to making do with less. 400 square feet of peeling wallpaper and second-hand furniture that Maya had transformed into something resembling home through sheer stubborn determination. The kitchenette's avocado green refrigerator wheezed constantly, and the bathroom door stuck unless you knew exactly how to jiggle the handle, but it was hers. More importantly, it was cheap enough that she could send most of her tips and wages to the hospital to chip away at her mother's mounting bills. Luna's eyes swept the small space with the hyper-vigilant assessment Maya recognized from her own childhood, looking for exits, hiding spots, potential threats. Maya's heart squeezed as she watched the little girl catalog everything: the fire escape outside the bedroom window, the deadbolt on the front door, the kitchen knives in the magnetic strip above the sink. "It's not much," Maya said, setting Luna down on the threadbare couch that doubled as Maya's bed most nights. "But nobody can hurt you here." The bathroom was barely large enough for one person, but Maya managed to run a warm bath in the chipped porcelain tub while Luna stood in the doorway, still clutching her teddy bear. Maya had learned not to rush frightened creatures, a lesson from the stray cat she'd fed behind the tavern, until it finally trusted her enough to come inside during last winter's blizzard. She found her softest towel, the pale blue one her mother had given her for Christmas 2 years ago, back when they'd both believed the cancer was just a temporary setback, back when Maya thought she might save enough money to finish community college, maybe even transfer to a real university someday. Those dreams felt laughably naive now, buried under medical bills and the grinding reality of survival. While Luna soaked in the tub, Maya rummaged through her dresser for something that might fit. Most of her clothes would swallow the child whole, but she found an old sleep shirt from her teenage years that would work as a nightgown. The fabric was soft from countless washings, faded pink with a cartoon character Maya couldn't quite remember the name of. Luna submitted to being dressed and tucked into Maya's bed with the same quiet resignation she'd shown downstairs. Maya had given her the good pillow, the one without the lumps, and pulled the blanket up to her chin. The teddy bear remained clutched against Luna's chest like a talisman against the dark. "I'll be right here on the couch," Maya whispered, though she doubted she'd sleep. Her mind was already spinning through worst-case scenarios. What if Tank Volkov thought she'd kidnapped his daughter? What if the rival gang that had hurt Luna came looking? What if the police got involved and took Luna away to some sterile foster home where nobody would understand her trauma? Maya settled onto the couch and stared at the water-stained ceiling, listening to Luna's breathing gradually slow and deepen. Through the thin walls, she could hear Mrs. Rodriguez's television next door, the same late-night talk show the elderly woman watched every night. Across the street, the warehouse loading dock would start up in a few hours, filling the pre-dawn darkness with the backup beeps of delivery trucks and the shouts of workers beginning another day of barely making ends meet. This was Maya's world, small, predictable, safe in its invisibility. She knew every pothole on the route to the hospital, every regular's drink order, every excuse for why her mother's insurance wouldn't cover this treatment or that medication. She knew which customers tipped well and which ones tried to cop a feel when she collected their empty bottles. She knew the exact amount in her checking account down to the penny because there was never enough buffer to lose track. For 8 years, ever since aging out of foster care, Maya had built this life one careful brick at a time. Nothing flashy, nothing that would draw attention. She paid her rent on time, sent money to her mother, and tried not to want things she couldn't afford. It wasn't much, but it was stable. Now, watching Luna's small form beneath the blankets, Maya felt that stability cracking like ice in a spring thaw. She'd pulled a thread that could unravel everything, her safety, her anonymity, maybe even her life. Tank Volkov's reputation wasn't built on forgiveness, and she had no idea what forces had put his daughter in that dumpster. But as Luna stirred and whispered something unintelligible in her sleep, Maya knew she'd make the same choice again. Some things mattered more than safety. Maya dozed fitfully on the couch, jerking awake at every small sound. The building settling, Mrs. Rodriguez's toilet flushing, Luna's soft whimpers from the bedroom. Her neck ached from the awkward angle, but she couldn't bring herself to move too far from the doorway where she could see Luna's sleeping form. Around 4 a.m., the warehouse trucks began their morning symphony across the street. Maya listened to the familiar rhythm of backup beepers and shouted instructions, trying to let the routine sounds lull her back toward sleep. Instead, a different sound cut through the industrial white noise, the deep, throaty growl of a motorcycle engine growing louder. Maya's eyes snapped open. In this neighborhood, motorcycles weren't unusual, but something about the deliberate slowness of this engine, the way it seemed to prowl rather than simply pass through, made her stomach clench with dread. The engine cut off directly in front of Rosie's tavern. Maya crept to the window overlooking the street, careful to stay behind the faded curtains. In the pale pre-dawn light, she could make out a massive figure astride a black Harley Davidson, studying the tavern's front entrance like he was memorizing every detail. Even from 3 stories up and half hidden in shadow, the man radiated a controlled menace that made Maya's throat go dry. Tank Volkov had come for his daughter. Maya's hands trembled as she stepped back from the window. She'd known this moment would come, but she'd hoped for more time. Time to figure out what to say, time to understand what had happened to Luna, time to prepare for a confrontation with one of Newark's most feared criminals. The man dismounted with fluid grace despite his size, and Maya caught a glimpse of the death's head patch on his leather jacket. Her pulse hammered against her ribs as she watched him survey the empty street, his head turning with the methodical precision of a predator checking for threats. Luna was still sleeping, her small face peaceful for the first time since Maya had found her. Whatever horrors had driven the child into that dumpster, at least she'd had a few hours of safety, a few hours where nobody could hurt her. Maya thought of her own childhood, the parade of foster homes, the social workers who saw her as just another case file, the loneliness that carved itself so deep it became part of her DNA. She could wake Luna now, slip out the back fire escape while Tank was focused on the front entrance, take her to the police station, to social services, anywhere that would make Luna someone else's responsibility. It would be the smart choice, the safe choice. Instead, Maya found herself moving toward the bedroom, drawn by some gravitational pull she couldn't name. Luna lay curled on her side, the teddy bear pressed against her cheek. In sleep, she looked even younger than 4, impossibly small and vulnerable. Maya had spent one night with this child, but already the thought of abandoning her felt like ripping away a piece of her own soul. Footsteps echoed on the tavern's front porch below, followed by the rattle of the door handle. Tank was testing the entrance, probably planning his next move. Maya had maybe minutes before he found another way in, and she still had no idea what she was going to say to him. Your daughter was hiding in my dumpster, covered in blood and scared silent. I took her in because nobody should have to face the dark alone. Please don't kill me. The absurdity of her situation might have made her laugh if she weren't so terrified. She was a nobody, a foster kid turned bartender who couldn't even afford her mother's medical bills. What business did she have standing between a motorcycle club president and his daughter? But as Luna's eyes fluttered open, focusing on Maya with instant recognition and something that might have been relief, Maya felt her resolve solidify into something unbreakable. "Mama Maya," Luna whispered, the first words she'd spoken since Maya found her. The simple phrase hit Maya like a physical blow. This broken little girl, traumatized and abandoned, had somehow claimed Maya as safety in a world that had shown her only violence. Maya knelt beside the bed, brushing a strand of dark hair from Luna's forehead. "I'm here, sweetheart," Maya whispered back, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. Heavy footsteps moved around the building's perimeter below. Tank was looking for another way in, and Maya's rickety fire escape wouldn't keep him out for long if he was determined to reach them. Maya looked at Luna's trusting face and made her second life-altering decision in 12 hours. She wouldn't run, wouldn't hand this child over to the system or back to whatever nightmare she'd escaped from, not without understanding what had happened, not without making sure Luna would be truly safe. Even if it meant facing down Tank Volkov himself, the fire escape began to creak under someone's weight. Maya's breath caught as the fire escape groaned again, each metallic protest announcing Tank's steady ascent toward her window. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the pre-dawn stillness, like a countdown to her own execution. Every rational thought in her head screamed at her to grab Luna and run, but her feet remained rooted to the bedroom floor as if the old hardwood had grown around them. "Mama Maya." Luna's voice was barely a whisper, but the trust in those 2 words made Maya's chest tighten with a responsibility she'd never asked for. The little girl was sitting up now, her enormous blue eyes fixed on Maya's face with an intensity that seemed far too old for someone who still needed help reaching light switches. "It's okay, sweetheart," Maya managed, though her voice betrayed the lie. Nothing about this was okay. She was about to face a man whose reputation for violence had parents 3 counties over using his name to frighten misbehaving children, and her only plan was to somehow convince him not to kill her. The fire escape creaked again, closer now. 3rd floor, maybe 2nd. Maya's hands shook as she smoothed Luna's hair, trying to project a calm she absolutely didn't feel. What did she really know about this child, beyond the obvious trauma written in every flinch and careful movement? What if Luna had run away from Tank for good reason? The blood on her clothes, the terror that had driven her into a dumpster during a thunderstorm. What if Maya was about to hand a helpless child back to her abuser? But the way Luna had whispered Mama Maya didn't sound like a child afraid of going home. It sounded like someone trying to hold on to the first safety she'd found in a long time. Maya's mind raced through fragments of overheard conversations at the bar. Tank Volkov was ruthless in business, sure, but she'd never heard stories about him hurting kids. The bikers who drank at Rosie's sometimes talked about their families with surprising tenderness. Rough men who rode with photos of their children tucked inside their wallets. who called home between runs to say goodnight to toddlers who worshipped their tattooed fathers. Still, reputation and reality didn't always align. Maya had learned that lesson early, watching social workers smile while they placed her in homes where the foster parents saw dollar signs instead of a scared 8-year-old who wet the bed and hoarded crackers in her pillowcase. The fire escape fell silent. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs as she strained to hear footsteps, breathing, any sign of where Tank might be. The silence felt more menacing than the creaking metal had. Was he outside her bedroom window right now, studying the thin curtains that separated them? Was he planning his entry, deciding whether to kick in the glass or try for subtlety? Luna's small hand found Maya's wrist, tiny fingers wrapping around the bone with surprising strength. "Don't let them take me," she whispered, and Maya's heart shattered completely. The simple plea confirmed Maya's worst fears. Luna wasn't afraid of Tank, she was afraid of them, someone else. The people who had put blood on her clothes and terror in her eyes, who had driven a 4-year-old into the Newark streets during a thunderstorm. Maya thought of her mother lying in the hospital bed 20 minutes away, probably awake now and watching the sunrise through a window that overlooked the parking garage. Her mother who'd taught her that sometimes the right choice and the smart choice weren't the same thing, who'd taken in stray cats and lent money to neighbors even when their own cupboards were bare, who'd raised Maya to believe that protecting the vulnerable was worth any risk. "I won't," Maya promised Luna, and meant it. Even if Tank Volkov turned out to be everything his reputation claimed, even if standing between this child and harm meant facing down the most dangerous man in Newark, even if it cost Maya everything she'd built, her safety, her anonymity, her carefully constructed invisible life. A soft knock echoed through the apartment. Not the violent pounding Maya had expected, not the sound of splintering wood or shattering glass. Just 3 quiet knocks on her front door, almost respectful in their restraint. Maya blinked in confusion. Tank had climbed to her fire escape, circled her building like a predator, and now he was knocking politely? The contradiction made her question everything she thought she knew about this man. Luna's grip on her wrist tightened. "Papa," she breathed, and for the first time since Maya had found her, something other than fear flickered across the child's face. Recognition, relief, maybe even love. The knock came again, patient but insistent. Maya looked at Luna's face, still pale, still haunted, but no longer the mask of absolute terror it had been in the dumpster. Whatever had hurt this child, Luna wasn't afraid it was standing outside Maya's door. Maya took a shaky breath and made her third life-altering decision in 12 hours. She would open that door. Maya stood frozen for a heartbeat, Luna's small hand still wrapped around her wrist like an anchor. The knock came a third time, and something in its measured patience made her decision feel less like stepping off a cliff and more like finally moving forward after years of standing still. "Stay here, sweetheart," Maya whispered, gently extracting her wrist from Luna's grip. "I'll be right back." The walk from bedroom to front door felt like crossing an ocean. Each step took her further from the predictable safety of her small world and closer to something vast and unknowable. Maya's hand trembled as she reached for the deadbolt, and she realized this moment would divide her life into before and after, before she opened the door to Tank Volkov, and after, when everything she thought she knew about herself would be tested. The lock turned with a soft click that seemed to echo through her bones. Maya opened the door 6 inches, just enough to see the man who'd haunted her imagination for the past hour. Nothing could have prepared her for the reality of Tank Volkov standing in her narrow hallway, filling the space like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. He was enormous, easily 6'4" with shoulders that seemed engineered for violence. His dark hair was pulled back in a way that emphasized the brutal angles of his face, and tattoos crawled up his neck like warnings written in a language Maya couldn't read. The death's head patch on his leather jacket seemed to pulse with its own malevolent life in the dim hallway light. But his eyes stopped Maya's heart entirely. Not because they were cruel or cold, but because they held a kind of desperate exhaustion she recognized from her own reflection during her mother's worst nights in the ICU. This was a man who'd been running on fear and caffeine and sheer stubborn will, who'd reached the end of his rope and found nothing but air. "You found her," Tank said, his voice rougher than gravel but pitched low enough not to wake the neighbors. "My Luna." There was no threat in those words, no demand or ultimatum, just a father's broken gratitude that made Maya's chest tighten with unexpected sympathy. She opened the door another inch, studying his face for signs of deception or violence, but found only exhaustion and relief, so profound it seemed to age him in real time. "She was hiding behind the tavern," Maya said carefully, keeping her voice equally quiet. "During the storm, she was scared." Tank's jaw worked like he was chewing words too painful to speak aloud. "The scorpions hit our safe house. Luna's mother—" He stopped, shook his head, tried again. "Luna ran. Been looking for her for 18 hours. The simple explanation landed like puzzle pieces clicking into place. Luna hadn't been running from Tank. She'd been running from the men who'd killed her mother. The blood on her clothes, the terror in her eyes, the way she'd whispered, "Don't let them take me." It all made horrible sense now. Maya felt the last of her resistance crumble. This man might be dangerous, might have done terrible things in his role as club president, but he wasn't the monster who'd put that haunted look in Luna's eyes. He was just a father whose world had exploded around him, desperate to hold on to the only family he had left. "She's safe," Maya said, opening the door completely. "She's in my bedroom." Tank's relief was a physical thing, his massive shoulders sagging as tension he'd carried for 18 hours finally began to release. But he didn't push past Maya into the apartment, didn't demand his daughter. Instead, he studied Maya with the same careful assessment she'd been giving him. "You took her in," he said, and there was wonder in his voice, like he couldn't quite believe someone would risk themselves for a stranger's child. "Fed her, cleaned her up, kept her safe." Maya thought of Luna curled in her bed, small and trusting and calling her Mama Maya like a prayer. Anyone would have done the same thing. Tank's laugh held no humor. No, they wouldn't have. Most people see the patch and run the other way. Smart people don't get involved with death's head business. His dark eyes searched her face. "Why did you?" The question hung between them like a bridge Maya could either cross or burn. She could give him the easy answer, that she'd acted on instinct, that finding Luna safe was reward enough, that she was happy to step back into her invisible life now that the crisis was over. Instead, Maya heard herself say, because she needed someone to care about her more than their own safety, because everyone deserves that, especially children. Something shifted in Tank's expression, a recognition that went deeper than gratitude. He nodded slowly, like she'd passed some tests she hadn't known she was taking. "I need to see her," he said simply. Maya stepped aside, crossing her own threshold into territory she'd never mapped. As Tank Volkov entered her small apartment, she understood that her careful, invisible life was over. Whatever came next would be bigger, more dangerous, and completely unknown. But watching this feared man's face transform as Luna's sleepy voice called Papa. From the bedroom, Maya realized she wasn't afraid anymore. She was finally, impossibly, exactly where she needed to be. The reunion between Tank and Luna was nothing like Maya had expected. She'd braced herself for tears, for drama, for the kind of emotional explosion that usually followed 18 hours of terror. Instead, Tank approached Luna's bedside with the careful reverence of someone entering a cathedral, as if sudden movements might shatter the fragile peace Maya had managed to create. "Hey, little moon," Tank whispered, settling his massive frame onto the edge of Maya's narrow bed. Luna launched herself into his arms with a fierceness that belied her small size, and Maya watched Tank's carefully controlled facade crack just enough to reveal the devastated father underneath. Maya retreated to the kitchen, giving them space while her mind raced through the implications of what she'd just invited into her life. Through the thin walls, she could hear Tank's low voice mixing with Luna's whispered responses, and the intimacy of their reunion made her chest tight with emotions she couldn't name. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother's night nurse. Vitol's stable, sleeping peacefully. Dr. Martinez wants to discuss treatment options this afternoon. Maya stared at the message, reality crashing back like a cold wave. Her mother's medical bills, her job at Rosie's, the careful budget that kept them barely afloat, all of it suddenly felt impossibly distant, like concerns from someone else's life. How could she worry about insurance copays when Luna had called her Mama Maya with such desperate trust? Tank's voice from the bedroom doorway made her jump. His presence seemed to compress her small kitchen, making the space feel dollhouse tiny. "We need to talk." Maya nodded, following him back to the living room where Luna sat cross-legged on the couch, clutching her blood-stained teddy bear. The little girl's eyes tracked between Maya and Tank like she was trying to solve a puzzle, and Maya realized Luna was as uncertain about what came next as she was. "The Scorpions won't stop looking for her," Tank said without preamble. "They killed her mother to get to me, and they'll kill Luna if they find her. Your place isn't safe anymore." The words hit Maya like physical blows. "What do you mean, not safe?" Tank's expression was grim. "You helped my daughter. That makes you a target. The Scorpions don't leave loose ends, especially ones that can identify them." He gestured toward Luna. "She saw everything. They know that." Maya felt the walls of her small world closing in. She'd thought saving Luna was the end of the crisis, not the beginning of something larger and more dangerous. "So what happens now?" "Now you disappear for a while. Both of you." Tank pulled out his phone, fingers moving across the screen with practiced efficiency. "I've got a safe house outside the city. Clean papers, security, everything you need until this gets resolved." "Wait." Maya's head spun, trying to keep up. "You want me to go into hiding? I have a job, responsibilities. My mother is in the hospital." "Your mother will be dead if the Scorpions decide you're a threat," Tank interrupted, his voice cutting through her protests like a blade. "They don't just kill targets, Maya. They kill anyone connected to targets. Family, friends, innocent bystanders. That's how they send messages." Maya looked at Luna, who was watching the conversation with wide, solemn eyes. The little girl had already lost her mother to this violence. How could Maya risk her own mother the same way? "There's another option," Tank continued, and something in his tone made Maya's stomach clench. "You walk away, right now. Luna comes with me, you go back to your life, and we pretend this never happened." The suggestion felt like a punch to the gut. Maya's eyes met Luna's across the small room, and she saw the fear creeping back into the child's expression. Fear of being abandoned again, of losing the only person who'd made her feel safe since her world exploded. "She needs you," Tank added quietly. "Luna doesn't trust Easy, but she trusts you. First time I've seen her calm since—" He didn't finish the sentence, but Maya could fill in the blanks. Maya thought of her careful, invisible life. The routine that had kept her safe for years, the predictable boundaries that protected her from exactly this kind of chaos. She could walk away, return to serving drinks and counting tips and visiting her mother on Tuesday evenings. It would be smart, safe, rational, but Luna's small voice echoed in her memory. "Don't let them take me." "How long?" Maya asked, and knew she'd already made her choice. "However long it takes to end this war," Tank replied. "Could be weeks, could be months." Maya's phone buzzed again, probably another message about her mother's treatment plan, another reminder of the life she was about to abandon. But as Luna slipped off the couch and pressed against Maya's side, small arms wrapping around her waist with desperate affection, Maya realized some choices were bigger than safety or logic. "When do we leave?" she asked. Tank's smile was sharp as a blade. "Pack light. We ride in an hour." Maya stared at the single duffel bag on her bed, trying to distill 28 years of life into something that could fit on the back of a motorcycle. "What did you take when you were disappearing from your own existence?" The passport she'd never used gathered dust from her jewelry box. Her mother's wedding ring, the only thing of value she owned. 3 changes of clothes that would mean nothing to Luna but everything to maintaining some thread of normalcy. Her hands trembled as she folded a sweater her mother had knitted last Christmas, back when the world made sense and biker wars were something that happened to other people in other neighborhoods. The yarn still smelled faintly of her mother's perfume, and Maya pressed it to her face, wondering if she'd ever see the woman who'd raised her again. "Time's ticking," Tank's voice carried from the living room, where he was making phone calls in rapid-fire sentences that sounded more like military commands than conversations. Maya caught fragments: route secured, extraction point, full protection detail, words that reinforced how far she'd fallen down this particular rabbit hole. Luna appeared in the bedroom doorway, having changed from Maya's oversized t-shirt into tiny jeans and a pink hoodie that Tank must have brought. The little girl clutched her teddy bear against her chest, but her eyes were fixed on Maya's packing with an intensity that made Maya's throat tight. "Are you coming with us?" Luna asked, her voice small and careful, like she was afraid the wrong tone might shatter whatever fragile promise held them together. Maya knelt to Luna's eye level, taking the child's free hand in both of hers. "Yes, sweetheart, I'm coming with you." Luna's relief was visible, tension flowing out of her small shoulders like air from a punctured balloon. "Promise?" The word hung between them, weighted with all the adult promises that had already been broken in Luna's short life. Maya thought of her mother in the hospital bed, of Dr. Martinez waiting for treatment decisions that might not come, of her job at Rosie's and the rent due next week and all the ordinary catastrophes that would multiply in her absence. "Promise," Maya said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. Tank appeared behind Luna, phone tucked away, his presence filling the doorway like an eclipse. "Bikes are here. We need to move." Maya shouldered her bag and followed them through her apartment, taking what might be her last look at the space that had been her sanctuary for 3 years. The coffee mug still sitting in the sink from yesterday morning, the stack of medical bills on the kitchen counter, the life she was walking away from felt suddenly precious in its ordinariness. Outside, 2 motorcycles waited in the alley, Tank's massive Harley and a slightly smaller bike, with a leather-clad woman astride it. The woman looked like she could tear apart a grown man with her bare hands, but when she saw Luna, her expression softened into something approaching maternal. "This is Reaper," Tank said by way of introduction. "She'll be riding escort." Reaper nodded to Maya, her assessment quick and professional. "Heard you pulled our girl out of some trouble. Club owes you." Maya wasn't sure what owing a favor to the Death's Head MC meant, but she nodded back, trying to project more confidence than she felt. Tank was already securing Luna in a specially designed child seat behind him, double-checking straps and helmets with the methodical care of someone who'd done this many times before. "Ever been on a bike?" Tank asked Maya as he handed her a helmet. "No," Maya admitted, staring at the machine that would carry her away from everything she'd ever known. The Harley looked like controlled violence, waiting to be unleashed, all chrome and black metal and barely contained power. Tank's smile held no mockery. "Hold tight. Trust the bike to stay upright. Trust me to get you there safe." As Maya climbed onto the bike behind him, the leather of his jacket warm against her palms, she realized trust was all she had left. Trust that this man who'd built his reputation on violence would protect her. Trust that Luna would be safe in whatever destination Tank had chosen. Trust that stepping into his world wouldn't destroy everything good she'd tried to build. The engine roared to life beneath them, vibration thrumming through Maya's bones like a heartbeat. Through the helmet's visor, she caught one last glimpse of her apartment building, windows dark in the pre-dawn light, before Tank guided them into the empty streets. As Newark fell away behind them, Maya pressed closer against Tank's broad back and held on tight. There was no turning back now, no returning to her invisible life, no pretending this choice hadn't been made the moment she'd found Luna in that dumpster. Whatever waited ahead would test every assumption Maya had ever made about herself, about the line between right and wrong, about how far she was willing to go to protect someone who'd called her mama with desperate trust. The motorcycle carried them toward an uncertain dawn, and Maya Chen discovered she was no longer afraid of the unknown. The safe house Tank had promised, turned out to be a fortified compound that looked like a cross between a prison and a military base. As their motorcycles rumbled through the gate, Maya caught glimpses of razor wire, security cameras, and men with guns who watched their arrival with the cold assessment of predators evaluating threats. Her stomach dropped as the reality of her situation crystallized. This wasn't temporary sanctuary, this was war. "Welcome to hell," Reaper muttered, pulling off her helmet as they parked beside a concrete bunker that had probably been built to withstand artillery strikes. Tank lifted Luna from the bike with gentle efficiency, but Maya could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes constantly scanned their surroundings. Even here, surrounded by his own people, he expected danger. "Papa, I don't like this place," Luna whispered, pressing her face against Tank's neck. Maya didn't like it either. The compound felt like a cage disguised as protection, all harsh angles and suspicious stares. 3 men emerged from the main building, leather jackets marking them as Death's Head members, but their expressions held none of Tank's careful restraint. These men looked hungry for violence, eager to settle whatever score had brought them all here. "Boss," the largest of them said, his voice carrying the kind of casual menace that made Maya's skin crawl, "Scorpions hit 2 more of our safe houses this morning. They're getting bolder." Tank's jaw tightened. "Casualties?" "None of ours. But they left messages, pictures." The man's eyes flicked to Luna, then away. "They want the kid, Tank. They're making it real clear what happens if we don't hand her over." Maya felt the world tilt sideways. She'd thought she understood the stakes when Tank had explained the danger, but hearing it laid out in such brutal terms made her knees weak. Luna wasn't just a witness. She was a target with a bounty on her head, and Maya had just volunteered to stand between a 4-year-old and killers who made threats with photographs. "They can want whatever they like," Tank said, his voice carrying the kind of quiet authority that ended arguments before they started. "Luna stays protected. End of discussion." "What about our other problem?" The man's gaze settled on Maya like a physical weight. "Civilians are liability, Tank. She doesn't know our world, doesn't understand what she signed up for. First time bullets start flying, she'll panic and get someone killed." Maya's mouth went dry. She'd walked into a war zone armed with nothing but good intentions and a desperate need to protect Luna. These men saw her as deadweight, a complication that would cost lives when the shooting started. And from the look in Tank's eyes, he was starting to wonder if they were right. "I can handle myself," Maya said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. The man laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You ever killed anyone, sweetheart? Ever looked a man in the eyes while you put a bullet in his brain? Because that's what it's going to take to keep breathing in this war." Maya's hands shook as the full weight of her choice crashed down on her. She'd thought she was being brave, stepping up to protect Luna when the child needed her most. Instead, she'd thrown herself into a situation she couldn't possibly understand, putting everyone at greater risk by her very presence. "Enough," Tank said, but Maya could hear the doubt creeping into his voice. "Maya, we need to talk." He led her away from the group, Luna still clinging to his shoulder, until they reached a small building that looked marginally less like a fortress than the others. Inside, the space was sparse but clean. A bed, a table, 2 chairs and bars on the windows that made Maya's chest tight with claustrophobia. "This is what you signed up for," Tank said, setting Luna down but keeping one hand on her shoulder. "Armed guards, locked doors, and the very real possibility that someone's going to try to kill you for helping us." Maya looked at Luna, who was studying her with those 2 old eyes, waiting to see if another adult would abandon her when the going got tough. The child had already watched her mother die, had already run through the night clutching a blood-soaked teddy bear. How much more loss could one small person survive? "My guys are right," Tank continued. "You're not built for this kind of violence. First firefight, you'll freeze up or run, and that hesitation will get people killed, including Luna." Maya's heart hammered against her ribs as Tank laid out the impossible choice she faced. She could stay and become a liability that endangered the child she'd sworn to protect, or she could leave and abandon Luna to face this nightmare with only violent strangers for company. Either way, Someone she cared about would suffer for her decision. "What do you want me to do?" Maya whispered. Tank's smile held no warmth. "Learn to kill or get out of the way." The words hit Maya like physical blows, each syllable stripping away another layer of the naive courage that had carried her this far. Learn to kill or get out of the way. She stared at Tank's impassive face, searching for some hint that he didn't mean it, that this was just another test she could somehow pass through sheer determination. But his eyes held only cold pragmatism, the kind of brutal honesty that came from watching too many good intentions get people killed. Maya started, then stopped, because what could she possibly say? That she'd never even held a gun? That the thought of deliberately hurting another human being made her physically ill? That she'd convinced herself love and determination would somehow be enough to protect Luna from killers who photographed their threats? Luna tugged at Maya's sleeve, her small voice cutting through the suffocating tension. "Mama Maya, why does everyone look angry?" The innocent question shattered what remained of Maya's composure. She knelt beside Luna, trying to keep her expression calm while her world crumbled around her. "They're just worried, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups get worried about keeping you safe." "Are you leaving?" Luna asked, and the fear in her voice was like a knife twisting in Maya's chest. Maya opened her mouth to reassure her, but the words died in her throat. Because how could she promise to stay when Tank was right? When her inexperience might be the thing that got Luna killed? When loving this child might not be enough to actually protect her? Her phone buzzed against her hip, a sound that seemed impossibly distant, like an echo from another lifetime. Maya pulled it out with trembling fingers, squinting at the screen through tears she hadn't realized were falling. "Maya, where are you? Your shift started an hour ago. Rosie's pissed. Call me back. Jenny." The message from her co-worker felt like a message from an alternate universe, a place where the biggest crisis was showing up late for work, and the most dangerous thing she faced was an angry boss. Maya stared at the phone, paralyzed by the sudden realization of everything she'd already lost. Her job, her routine, her mother, lying in a hospital bed expecting visits that wouldn't come and medical decisions that Maya wasn't there to make. The careful life she'd built from nothing, destroyed in less than 24 hours by her desperate need to save a child who might be better off without her. Tank's voice was gentler now, but that only made it worse. Pity was harder to bear than anger. "You don't belong in this world. That's not weakness, that's sanity." Luna's grip on Maya's sleeve tightened, tiny fingers clutching the fabric like it was the only thing keeping her from drowning. "Please don't go, Mama Maya. Please." The plea broke something fundamental inside Maya's chest. She pulled Luna into her arms, breathing in the scent of children's shampoo and the lingering fear that clung to the little girl like smoke. For a moment, holding Luna felt like the only real thing in a world gone mad, the only choice that had ever truly mattered. But Tank was right. Maya wasn't built for this kind of violence, wasn't equipped for a war where taking a life might be the price of saving one. She was a barmaid who'd grown up believing the best of people, who'd never learned to see threats in shadows or death in strangers' eyes. "I can learn," Maya whispered, but even she could hear how hollow the words sounded. Tank shook his head slowly. "There's no time for learning curves when bullets start flying. Luna needs someone who can protect her, not someone who'll get her killed trying to figure it out." Maya's phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from Dr. Martinez's office, probably about her mother's treatment plan, about decisions that couldn't wait while Maya played at being a hero in someone else's war. The sound pulled her back to the reality she'd tried to abandon, responsibilities and consequences that extended far beyond this fortified room. "Answer it," Tank said quietly, reading her expression with uncomfortable accuracy. "Face what you've got waiting for you out there." Maya declined the call, but the damage was done. Tank had seen her moment of hesitation, that flicker of doubt about whether she belonged here or there or anywhere at all, and Luna had felt her tense up at the sound, smart enough even at 4 to recognize the signs of an adult preparing to abandon her. "You're leaving," Luna said. It wasn't a question this time, just the flat acceptance of someone too young to have learned that kind of resignation. Maya looked into Luna's eyes, those two old eyes that had already seen too much loss, and felt the last of her naive courage crumble into dust. She'd thought she was strong enough for this, thought love would be enough to bridge the gap between her world and Tank's. Instead, she'd become exactly what Tank's men had predicted, a liability who would get people killed through her own inexperience. All she'd wanted was to save one little girl. Instead, she'd destroyed everything, including her ability to actually keep Luna safe. The silence stretched between them like a chasm, broken only by Luna's quiet breathing against Maya's shoulder. Maya stared at the concrete floor, feeling the weight of every choice that had led her to this moment, finding Luna in the dumpster, bringing her home, following Tank into this fortress of violence and desperation. She'd failed. The admission settled in her chest like a stone, heavy and cold and undeniable. But as Luna shifted in her arms, something clicked into focus with startling clarity. Maya had been asking the wrong question this entire time. "Tank," she said slowly, lifting her head to meet his gaze. "Why didn't you leave Luna somewhere safe when this war started?" His jaw tightened. "There is nowhere safe. The Scorpions have connections everywhere, police, social services, foster families. They'd find her within hours. But you could have sent her away, out of state, out of the country, used your resources to disappear her completely." "She's my daughter," Tank said, as if that explained everything. "No." Maya stood, Luna still in her arms, and something fundamental shifted inside her chest. "That's not it. You could have kept her safe by letting her go, but you can't do it. Because she's not just your daughter, she's your absolution." Tank's eyes went dangerously cold. "You don't know what you're talking about." But Maya did, suddenly and completely. The revelation blazed through her like wildfire, illuminating truths she'd been too naive to see. "Luna is proof that you're not the monster everyone says you are. She's your one good thing in a life built on violence. And you can't let her go because without her, what are you?" "Maya!" Tank's voice carried a warning, but she pressed on. "You think keeping her close protects her, but it doesn't. It protects you. From having to face what you've become, from losing the only person who still believes you're capable of love." Maya's voice grew stronger as understanding crystallized. "You're not protecting Luna. You're sacrificing her to save yourself from drowning in your own darkness." The air in the room turned electric with tension. Tank's hand moved instinctively toward the gun at his hip, muscle memory responding to a threat his conscious mind couldn't quite process. But Luna's presence stopped him cold, just as Maya had known it would. "You want to know the difference between us, Tank? I know when I'm in over my head, but you've convinced yourself that your need for Luna is the same thing as what's best for her." Maya's heart hammered, but her voice remained steady. "I'm a liability because I might get her killed. You're a liability because you'll get her killed, just to avoid being alone with what you've done." Tank's composure cracked, revealing something raw and desperate underneath. "She's all I have left. And that's exactly the problem." Maya pressed Luna's face gently against her shoulder, shielding the child from the adult truth being spoken over her head. "A 4-year-old can't be your salvation, Tank. It's not fair to her, and it's not working for you." The revelation hit Tank like a physical blow, staggering him backward against the concrete wall. Maya watched recognition dawn in his eyes. The terrible understanding that his love for Luna had become another form of selfishness, that his desperate need to be her protector was the very thing putting her in danger. "I can't let her go," he whispered, and for the first time since Maya had known him, he sounded broken. "Yes, you can." Maya's voice was gentle now, because she finally understood they were fighting the same battle from opposite sides. Not forever, not permanently, but long enough to end this war without using her as a human shield for your conscience. Luna lifted her head from Maya's shoulder, those two wise eyes moving between the two adults who held her world in their trembling hands. "Are you fighting about me again?" "No, sweetheart," Maya said softly. "We're trying to figure out how to keep you safe." "I'm safe with you," Luna said with simple certainty. "Both of you." And there it was, the crushing weight of a child's trust, offered freely to two adults who were failing her in different ways but for similar reasons. Maya, because she was too weak to protect Luna from the violence coming for them. Tank, because he was too broken to save Luna from himself. The truth crystallized between them like shattered glass. Neither of them was equipped to be Luna's salvation. Maya lacked the strength for Tank's world, and Tank lacked the objectivity to make the hard choice Luna's survival demanded. But together, maybe together they could find a third option, one that didn't require Maya to become a killer or Tank to sacrifice Luna's safety for his own emotional needs. "There's another way," Maya said quietly, the possibility taking shape even as she spoke it. "But it means both of us have to give up what we want most." Tank's eyes searched Maya's face, looking for the trap he was certain lay hidden beneath her words. "What are you talking about?" Maya shifted Luna in her arms, buying herself a moment to organize thoughts that were still forming, still coalescing around a plan that felt both impossible and inevitable. "You said the Scorpions have connections everywhere. Police, social services, foster care. But what about places they'd never think to look? Like where?" "My mother's in Mount Sinai Hospital. Terminal cancer, maybe weeks left." The words came easier now that Maya could see the shape of what she was proposing. "She's in the palliative care wing. Private rooms, restricted access, security cameras everywhere because of the medication storage." Tank's frown deepened. "You want to hide Luna in a hospital?" "Not hide her. Register her as my niece, visiting her dying grandmother. Temporary guardianship papers. Your lawyers could draft them in hours. Luna stays in the room with my mother, gets meals brought up, has round-the-clock nursing supervision." Maya's voice gained strength as the pieces fell into place. The Scorpions would never look for her there. They're hunting for a biker's daughter in safe houses and motorcycle clubs, not a sick child visiting family. "And what happens to you?" Tank asked quietly. Maya met his gaze steadily. "I stay here. I learn to shoot, like you said. I become useful instead of a liability." She paused, feeling the weight of what she was about to sacrifice. "My mother won't know me when I see her again. The cancer's in her brain now. But Luna will remember both of us, and that has to be enough." Tank was silent for a long moment, studying her with those calculating eyes that missed nothing. "You'd give up saying goodbye to your mother?" "My mother raised me to do the right thing, even when it costs everything." Maya's throat tightened, but she pushed through. "Protecting Luna is the right thing, the only thing that matters now." Luna stirred in Maya's arms, looking up with sleepy confusion. "Mama Maya, are we going somewhere?" "You are, sweetheart," Maya said, smoothing Luna's hair with a hand that barely trembled. "You're going to meet my mama. She's very sick, but she'd love to have a little girl to take care of for a while. What about you and Papa?" Maya's heart cracked, but she kept her voice steady. "We have some grown-up work to do first, but we'll come see you every day, I promise." Tank pushed off from the wall, pacing to the barred window. "It could work," he said slowly. "Hospital security, medical privacy laws, no connection to Death's Head or any of our known associates." He turned back to Maya. "But if you stay here, there's no going back. Once you cross that line, once you pull a trigger to save lives, you can't uncross it." "I know," and Maya did know, with a clarity that surprised her. "I can't protect Luna by being who I was. That person was too weak, too naive. But maybe I can protect her by becoming who she needs me to be, even if it destroys who you are now." Maya thought of her old life, the quiet shifts at Rosie's, the careful budgeting, the simple routine of caring for her mother and trying to stay invisible. That life felt like something that had happened to someone else, a story she'd heard secondhand about a woman who thought the worst thing that could happen was being late for work. "That person couldn't save Luna," Maya said. "So maybe it's time she stopped existing." Tank nodded slowly, recognition flickering in his eyes. "You understand what you're signing up for? This isn't temporary. Once the Scorpions know you exist, know you chose our side, you're marked forever. Then we better make sure there aren't any Scorpions left to remember me." The words came out harder than Maya had intended, carrying a cold finality that surprised even her. But Tank smiled, the first genuine expression she'd seen from him all day. "All right," he said. "We do this your way. Luna goes to the hospital, you stay and learn to fight, and we end this war on our terms." He moved closer, his voice dropping to ensure Luna couldn't hear. "But understand, I'm not training you to wound people or scare them off. I'm training you to kill without hesitation, without mercy, because that's the only currency the Scorpions understand." Maya met his gaze without flinching. "Then teach me." Outside, she could hear the compound coming alive. Engines starting, men shouting orders, weapons being cleaned and loaded. The sound should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like a symphony building toward crescendo, toward the moment when everything would be decided. Luna would be safe. Maya would become whatever monster was necessary to ensure that safety. And Tank would learn that sometimes salvation came not from holding on to what you loved, but from being brave enough to let it go. The transformation began at dawn. Maya stood in the compound's makeshift armory, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead as Tank laid out an arsenal that would have terrified her 48 hours ago. Now she studied each weapon with clinical detachment, forcing herself to see tools instead of instruments of death. "Glock 19, Tank said, placing the pistol in her hands. 15 rounds, easy to conceal, reliable in close quarters. This will be your primary." The gun felt heavier than Maya had expected, its weight settling into her palm like a cold promise. She wrapped her fingers around the grip, muscle memory from a childhood she'd tried to forget suddenly surfacing. Her father, drunk and paranoid, teaching her to shoot bottles behind their trailer before child services took her away. The lessons she'd buried under years of trying to be better than where she came from. "You've held one before," Tank observed, watching her check the safety with unconscious competence. "Long time ago." Maya's voice was steady, but inside she felt the last threads of her old self fraying. Different life. The compound buzzed with preparation around them. Tank's men moved with practiced efficiency, some stripping and cleaning weapons, others studying surveillance photos, all of them preparing for a war that had been inevitable since the moment the Scorpions murdered Luna's mother. Maya had inserted herself into this machine of violence, and now she had to become a functioning part of it. Luna was safe. Maya clung to that knowledge like a lifeline as Tank guided her through weapon handling, cover tactics, and the brutal mathematics of survival. Her phone had buzzed twice with calls from the hospital, Dr. Martinez's office, probably wondering why Maya hadn't returned their calls about her mother's deteriorating condition. Each ignored ring felt like another bridge burning, another connection to her former life severed beyond repair. "Focus," Tank commanded, noting her distraction. "Hesitation gets people killed." Maya forced everything else from her mind except the weight of the gun and the target downrange. 24 hours ago, she'd been struggling to pay rent and hoping her mother would have a good day. Now she was learning to calculate kill shots while Luna played with dolls in a hospital room under the protection of armed guards disguised as orderlies. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd found her purpose by losing everything else. "The Scorpions will move tonight," Tank said during a brief break, studying surveillance footage on a laptop. "They know we've got Luna somewhere safe, but they don't know where. They'll try to draw us out, force a confrontation on their terms." Maya nodded, checking her weapon for the dozenth time. The motions were becoming automatic now, muscle memory overriding conscious thought. How many? 12 confirmed members, maybe more recruits from their affiliates. They're desperate now. Cornered animals fighting for survival. Tank's expression was grim. That makes them more dangerous, not less. The weight of what they were planning settled over Maya like a shroud. This wasn't going to be a battle or a firefight. It was going to be an execution. Tank's men weren't soldiers following rules of engagement. They were killers who understood that mercy was a luxury none of them could afford. And Maya was choosing to stand with them. Her phone buzzed again. This time she looked at the screen. "Maya, please call. Your mother is asking for you." Dr. Martinez. Maya stared at the message, feeling something fundamental tear inside her chest. Her mother, dying alone while Maya learned to kill strangers. The woman who'd sacrificed everything to give Maya a chance at a better life, spending her final days wondering why her daughter had abandoned her. Second thoughts? Tank asked, noting her expression. Maya deleted the message without responding. No. Luna needs this war to end, whatever that costs. But the words felt hollow, and Tank's knowing look suggested he heard the doubt underneath, because Maya was beginning to understand that saving Luna meant becoming someone her mother wouldn't recognize. Someone who could pull a trigger without hesitation, who could live with blood on her hands, who could sleep at night knowing she'd chosen violence over every other option. The compound's main door burst open, interrupting her spiral of guilt. Reaper strode in, his face grim with fresh intel. They hit 3 of our safe houses in the last hour, he reported. No one inside, but they left messages, pictures. Tank's jaw tightened. Show me. Reaper handed over his phone, displaying photos that made Maya's blood run cold. Bodies arranged in deliberate patterns, messages carved into walls, promises of what would happen to Luna when the Scorpions found her. Maya felt something shift inside her chest, the last vestiges of her old self burning away like paper in a furnace. These weren't people who could be reasoned with or deterred by half measures. They were monsters who murdered children and photographed their threats, who would hunt Luna forever unless someone stopped them permanently. When do we move? Maya asked, her voice carrying a new edge that surprised even her. Tank smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Tonight, we end this. The final confrontation was no longer looming. It was here. Maya stood in the compound's main room as Tank spread a detailed map across the scarred wooden table, the paper crinkling under the weight of surveillance photos and tactical notes. The plan was elegant in its brutality. They would draw the Scorpions into an abandoned warehouse on the industrial outskirts, a killing ground Tank's crew had been preparing for weeks. They'll expect us to hole up here, wait for them to come to us, Tank explained, his finger tracing routes through Newark's maze of streets. Instead, we leak Luna's location, false intel that puts her at this warehouse. When they move in for the kill, we'll be waiting. Maya studied the warehouse layout, her mind automatically calculating sight lines and escape routes. The transformation felt complete now, as if someone had reached inside her skull and rewired her thought patterns. Where she once would have seen loading docks and storage areas, she now saw choke points and cover positions. How many exits? She asked, her voice carrying the same clinical detachment she'd heard from Tank's men. 3 main, 2 emergency. We control all of them. Tank's eyes met hers across the map. You sure you're ready for this? Once shooting starts, there's no going back. The question should have terrified her. Instead, Maya felt a cold certainty settle into her bones. I stopped being able to go back the moment I pulled Luna from that dumpster. Reaper entered the room carrying a tactical vest sized for Maya's frame, Kevlar plates gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Custom fit, he said, helping her into the unfamiliar weight. Won't stop a rifle round, but it'll keep you breathing through most pistol calibers. Maya adjusted the straps, surprised by how natural the armor felt against her body. Like everything else in this new existence, the tools of violence were becoming extensions of herself rather than foreign objects she was trying to master. The Scorpions know we're coming, Tank continued, studying fresh intelligence reports. They've got their own surveillance, their own sources, but they don't know about you. You're our wild card, an unknown factor they can't plan for. The weight of that responsibility should have crushed her. Maya Chen, former barmaid and perpetual victim of circumstance, had become a secret weapon in a gang war. The absurdity would have made her laugh if she could still remember how. Her phone buzzed with another hospital message. Maya glanced at the preview text. Maya, your mother's condition has deteriorated. Please come immediately. She silenced the phone without reading further. Her mother was dying 20 minutes away, calling for a daughter who no longer existed. Maya had made her choice when she decided Luna's future mattered more than her own past. "Movement," called one of Tank's scouts from his position near the window. "3 vehicles, heading this direction. They're early." Tank swore, grabbing his rifle. "They're not waiting for nightfall. Probably figured out our timeline." He turned to Maya, his expression grim. "This is it. No more preparation, no more practice runs. You ready to use everything I taught you?" Maya checked her weapon one final time, muscle memory guiding her through the safety protocols that had become second nature. The Glock felt like an extension of her hand now, its weight as familiar as breathing. "I'm ready," she said, and meant it. The compound erupted into controlled chaos as Tank's men took defensive positions. Maya found herself moving without conscious thought, her body responding to training drilled into her over endless hours. She took cover behind an overturned table, her firing lane clear, her finger resting along the trigger guard exactly as Tank had taught her. Outside, engines growled closer. Maya could hear motorcycle pipes echoing off warehouse walls, the distinctive rumble of Scorpion bikes approaching like mechanical thunder. Her heart rate remained steady, adrenaline sharpening her focus rather than clouding it. This was her final test, not the carefully planned warehouse ambush, but this moment, right here, where all her choices had led. Everything she'd learned about violence and survival, about sacrifice and transformation, would be proven or disproven in the next few minutes. Maya thought of Luna, safe in a hospital room under armed guard, playing with toys while nurses who didn't know they were, protecting a biker's daughter, brought her juice and crackers. The image steadied her, reminding her why she'd chosen to become someone capable of killing. The first Scorpion bike rounded the corner, its rider scanning for targets. Maya centered her sights on his chest, her breathing controlled, her grip steady. "Remember," Tank called softly from his position. "They came here to murder a 4-year-old girl. Don't give them the chance." Maya's finger moved to the trigger. Outside, more bikes appeared, their riders dismounting with military precision, assault weapons gleaming in the afternoon sun. The final test had begun. The first shot shattered the afternoon silence. Maya squeezed the trigger as the lead Scorpion raised his rifle, her bullet catching him center mass exactly as Tank had drilled into her. The man spun sideways, his weapon clattering across asphalt as he dropped. No hesitation, no second thoughts, just the cold application of everything she'd learned about keeping monsters from reaching children. "Contact front." Tank's voice cut through the chaos as automatic weapons fire erupted from 3 directions. The compound's windows exploded inward, showering Maya with glass fragments that her Kevlar deflected. She rolled to new cover, her training overriding the screaming voice in her head that still couldn't believe Maya Chen was in a firefight. A Scorpion kicked down the side door, his assault rifle sweeping for targets. Maya put 2 rounds in his chest before he could acquire her position, watching him crumple without feeling anything except professional satisfaction. Tank's lessons had taken root completely. She was no longer a barmaid pretending to be dangerous. She was dangerous. "They're flanking left!" Reaper shouted from across the room, his rifle chattering in controlled bursts. Maya could see muzzle flashes through the smoke, hear boots on gravel as more Scorpions moved to surround the building. This wasn't the warehouse ambush they'd planned. This was desperate urban warfare with no backup and no escape route. Maya's phone buzzed against her ribs. Even here, even now, the hospital was calling about her dying mother. The irony cut deeper than any bullet could have. She was becoming a killer while the woman who'd taught her to be kind slipped away alone. "Maya, covering fire," Tank commanded, and she obeyed without thinking, her Glock barking steadily as Scorpions tried to advance through the main entrance. One stumbled, clutching his shoulder. Another dove behind a concrete barrier, cursing in Spanish as her bullets chipped fragments from his cover. The ammunition counter in her head, another of Tank's lessons, told her she had 6 rounds left. Maya dropped the spent magazine, reloaded with movements that had become automatic, and immediately engaged a Scorpion trying to climb through a blown-out window. The muscle memory felt ancient, as if she'd been doing this her entire life instead of learning it in 72 hours. "Grenade!" someone screamed. Maya threw herself behind a steel support beam as the world exploded in fire and shrapnel. The concussion wave slammed her against concrete, her ears ringing, dust and debris raining down like apocalyptic snow. Through the chaos she could hear Tank's voice, steady and professional, coordinating defensive fire as if this were a training exercise instead of a fight to the death. A scorpion rounded her cover position, his shotgun rising toward her face. Maya moved faster than thought, her training compressed into a single fluid motion. Deflect the barrel, close distance, put her pistol against his ribs, pull the trigger twice. The man folded around her bullets, his eyes wide with shock that someone who looked like a librarian had just killed him with textbook precision. She felt nothing. No horror, no guilt, no human response to taking a life. Just tactical assessment. Threat eliminated, ammunition expended, scan for next target. Tank had been right about crossing lines. Once you became capable of killing, everything else was just degrees of necessity. "Buildings compromised," Tank called out, blood streaming from a scalp wound. "We need to move." Maya looked around the shattered compound, Reaper down behind overturned furniture, two of Tank's men motionless near the back wall, smoke and cordite thick enough to taste. They were losing, and losing badly. The Scorpions had superior numbers, better weapons, and the tactical advantage of attackers who didn't care about collateral damage. Her phone buzzed again. This time Maya pulled it out, reading the preview text through cracked screen glass. "Maya, your mother passed away 20 minutes ago. She asked for you at the end." The words hit harder than the grenade blast. Her mother was gone, had died calling for a daughter who was busy learning to murder strangers in service of a war that would never really end. Maya felt something fundamental break inside her chest, the last connection to who she'd been before Luna and Tank and this blood-soaked transformation. "You okay?" Tank asked, noting her expression. Maya deleted the message, pocketed the phone, and checked her ammunition count. "My mother's dead," she said with mechanical calm, "so now I have nothing left to lose." Tank's eyes widened slightly at the emptiness in her voice, because Maya understood now what complete transformation felt like. Not gradual change, but the sudden death of everything you'd been, leaving only what was necessary for survival. The Scorpions wanted a war. They'd found one. Maya Chen was gone forever. What remained was something harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. A woman with nothing left to protect except a 4-year-old girl who would never know what her safety had cost. Outside, engines revved as reinforcements arrived. More Scorpions, more weapons, more death approaching through Newark's industrial maze. Maya smiled without warmth and prepared to meet them. The reinforcements came fast, 6 bikes roaring through the compound gates like mechanical vultures. Maya counted muzzle flashes through the smoke, calculated ammunition, measured the distance to Tank's position. The math was simple and brutal. They had minutes before being overrun. "We can't hold this position," Tank shouted over the gunfire, blood from his scalp wound painting his face in crimson streaks. "They'll pin us down and burn us out." Maya reloaded methodically, her movements precise despite the chaos. The grief over her mother's death had crystallized into something sharper than rage, a cold, surgical hatred that made every decision easier. She had failed the woman who'd raised her, but she would not fail Luna. "Then we don't hold," Maya said, her voice carrying an authority that surprised them both. "We make them pay for every step forward." Tank's eyes widened at the transformation. The frightened barmaid who'd stumbled into his world was gone, replaced by someone who spoke the language of tactical necessity with native fluency. Maya had crossed the final line, the one between people who killed when cornered and people who hunted. A Scorpion appeared in the doorway, assault rifle sweeping for targets. Maya put 3 rounds center mass before he could fire, watching him topple backward into his approaching teammates. The sight filled her with grim satisfaction rather than horror. These men had murdered Luna's mother, carved threats into walls, promised to torture a 4-year-old child. They deserved everything she could give them. "Reapers hit bad," Tank called from across the room. Maya could see their friend slumped against debris, his tactical vest dark with blood, his rifle abandoned beside him. More of Tank's crew were down. Good men who died protecting a little girl they barely knew because their president asked them to. The weight of those sacrifices should have crushed Maya. Instead, it fueled her. Each death demanded vengeance, and she had become vengeance incarnate. Her phone buzzed one final time. Maya glanced at the screen, a voicemail notification from Dr. Martinez, probably explaining her mother's final moments, the words of love Maya would never hear because she'd chosen war over goodbye. She deleted the notification without listening and turned to Tank. "How do we end this?" "The warehouse," Tank said, wincing as he shifted position. "Original plan. We make them chase us there, finish it on our terms." He met her eyes, seeing something that made him nod slowly. "You understand what that means? No prisoners, no mercy, no walking away?" Maya thought of her mother dying alone, calling for a daughter who was learning to kill. She thought of Luna's silent terror, the blood-stained teddy bear, the nightmares that would follow the child for years. She thought of the Scorpions' photographs, their promises, their absolute certainty that a 4-year-old girl was acceptable collateral damage in their war. "I understand," Maya said, and her voice carried the weight of irrevocable choice. "They want Luna dead because she witnessed her mother's murder, so we make sure no one's left to care what she saw." The words hung between them like a prayer and a condemnation. Maya was proposing genocide, the complete elimination of the Scorpions MC, every member, every prospect, every affiliate who might someday seek revenge against a little girl who'd done nothing but survive. Tank nodded slowly. "That's not justice, Maya. That's extinction." "Good," Maya replied without hesitation. "Some species deserve to go extinct." She moved to the window, studying the tactical situation with eyes that saw only problems to be solved. The Scorpions had superior numbers but inferior position. They were exposed in the compound's courtyard while Tank's remaining crew held hard cover inside the building. A fighting withdrawal to the warehouse would thin their ranks, string them out, make them vulnerable to the crossfire positions Tank had prepared. "Signal your men," Maya said, her tone carrying absolute command. "We move in 60 seconds. Anyone who can't keep up gets left behind." Tank stared at her for a long moment, seeing something that made him smile with genuine admiration. "Yes, ma'am." Maya Chen had died with her mother, 20 minutes ago, in a hospital room she'd never see. What remained was something unprecedented. A predator born from sacrifice, shaped by loss, and absolutely committed to protecting innocence regardless of the cost. The Scorpions had wanted a war. They'd created something far worse, a woman with nothing left to lose except one sleeping child's future. Maya checked her ammunition one final time and prepared to teach them the difference. Outside, the engines revved closer, bringing death and judgment to Newark's industrial maze. But for the first time since this began, Maya wasn't afraid of what was coming. She was eager for it. The silence after gunfire was different than Maya had imagined, not peaceful but heavy, with the weight of permanent choices. Smoke drifted through the warehouse's shattered windows, carrying the acrid smell of cordite and something darker that she didn't want to identify. Her ears still rang from the final exchange, but the absence of return fire told her everything she needed to know. It was over. Maya lowered her weapon, her hands steady despite everything. Around the warehouse floor, motionless forms in scorpion colors lay where Tank's crossfire had caught them. The tactical withdrawal had worked exactly as planned, stringing them out, making them vulnerable, eliminating them with the methodical efficiency of an extermination. She counted bodies automatically, her transformed mind cataloging threats neutralized rather than lives ended. 17. Every Scorpion who'd come for Luna was dead. Tank emerged from behind a concrete pillar, blood still streaking his face but his expression grimly satisfied. "That's all of them," he said, kicking an assault rifle away from a sprawled corpse. Local chapters finished. Word gets out that they went after a child and got wiped out for it. The national organization might think twice about revenge. Maya nodded, studying the carnage with clinical detachment. She should have felt something. Horror, guilt, the crushing weight of becoming a mass killer in the span of an hour. Instead, there was only cold satisfaction that Luna would sleep safely tonight. The Scorpions had chosen to threaten a 4-year-old girl. They had received the logical consequence of that choice. "You okay?" Tank asked, noting her expression. The question almost made her laugh. Was she okay? Maya Chen, who'd served drinks and worried about her mother's medical bills, was gone forever. What stood in this warehouse was something harder and more dangerous, a woman who'd discovered she was exceptionally good at killing when the stakes demanded it. "I'm what Luna needs me to be," Maya replied, and that felt like the only truth that mattered. Tank's phone rang. The hospital. They both stared at it for a moment before Tank answered. "Yeah?" A pause, then relief flooding his features. "We're on our way." Luna was awake and asking for them both. The drive back passed in companionable silence. Maya watched Newark's industrial landscape roll past, noting how different everything looked now. The abandoned lots and crumbling warehouses that had once seemed depressing now appeared tactical, places where someone could set up surveillance or plan an ambush. Her entire worldview had shifted, recalibrated around threats and defensive positions rather than rent payments and bar inventory. At the hospital, Detective Rivera met them in the corridor outside Luna's room. His expression was carefully neutral, but Maya caught him studying the blood spatter on her clothes with professional interest. "Heard there was some excitement in the warehouse district," Rivera said carefully. "Multiple shots fired, but no one's talking about what happened." Tank shrugged. "Industrial areas dangerous at night. All kinds of accidents happen." Rivera's eyes flicked to Maya, taking in her tactical vest and the cold confidence in her posture. "You look different, Miss Chen. More focused." Maya met his gaze steadily. "I found my calling." The detective nodded slowly, as if that explained everything. "Funny thing, word on the street is the Scorpions are done in Newark. Whole local chapter just disappeared. Probably relocated somewhere safer." "Probably," Tank agreed. They understood each other perfectly. Rivera had children of his own. Some conversations didn't need to happen explicitly. Inside Luna's room, the little girl was sitting up in bed, her dark eyes bright with fever but alert. When she saw Maya, she held out her arms, the first voluntary gesture Maya had ever seen from her. "Maya," Luna whispered, her voice barely audible but clear, the first word she'd spoken since that night in the dumpster. Maya gathered the child close, feeling something crack open in her chest, not the cold efficiency that had carried her through the warehouse, but the fierce protective love that had started this whole transformation. Luna was safe, the Scorpions were gone, the nightmares could begin healing. "I'm here, baby," Maya murmured into Luna's hair. "I'm not going anywhere." Tank watched them from the doorway, his expression soft. "Doc says she can go home tomorrow, full recovery." "Home." Maya tested the concept, realizing she no longer thought of her apartment above the tavern as home. Home was wherever Luna felt safe. Home was wherever Tank's scarred hands could build blanket forts and tell bedtime stories. Home was the family they'd forged from violence and sacrifice and love. Her phone buzzed with another message from the hospital administration about her mother's funeral arrangements. Maya glanced at it, felt the familiar stab of grief, then set the phone aside. She would handle those responsibilities tomorrow, say goodbye to the woman who'd raised her to be kind. But tonight belonged to the child who'd taught her that sometimes kindness meant being willing to kill. Luna fell asleep in her arms, finally peaceful. Outside the window, Newark's lights twinkled like stars, promising a future where a 4-year-old girl could grow up without looking over her shoulder. Maya held her daughter, because that's what Luna was now, in every way that mattered, and knew she'd made the right choice. The return. 3 weeks later, Maya stood behind the bar at Rosie's Tavern, wiping down glasses with mechanical precision. The familiar motions felt strange now. Her hands moved differently, carried themselves with a stillness that hadn't existed before. The regular customers noticed but didn't comment, sensing something fundamental had shifted in their soft-spoken barmaid. "Another round, Maya?" called Jimmy from his usual stool, his voice carrying the careful politeness people reserved for those they no longer quite recognized. "Coming up," Maya replied, reaching for the beer tap. Her movements were economical now, purposeful in a way that made the simple act of pouring drinks seem like tactical preparation. She caught herself scanning the room's entry points, noting exit routes, assessing which patrons might pose threats. The transformation was complete and irreversible. The bell above the door chimed, and Tank entered with Luna perched on his shoulders. The little girl's face lit up when she saw Maya, her voice ringing clear across the tavern. "Maya! Maya!" The other customers turned to watch as Luna scrambled down and ran between the bar stools, launching herself into Maya's waiting arms. 3 weeks of healing had worked miracles. The silent, traumatized child was becoming talkative, curious, quick to laugh, when Tank told his ridiculous jokes about motorcycles and teddy bears. "How's my girl?" Maya asked, lifting Luna onto the bar despite Rosie's health code concerns. "Did you help Tank with the grocery shopping?" "I picked the cereal," Luna announced proudly. "The one with the cartoon tiger. Tank said tigers are brave like you." Maya felt Tank's eyes on her, warm with understanding. They'd developed their own language over these weeks, speaking in glances and small gestures about the life they were building together. He understood that Maya needed to return to Rosie's occasionally, to remind herself where this journey had started. And she understood that he needed to watch her here, to see how completely she'd changed while somehow remaining herself. "Speaking of brave," Tank said, settling onto a bar stool with the easy confidence that made other patrons instinctively give him space. "Luna wants to show you something." The child reached into her pocket and produced a crayon drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands outside a house with a motorcycle parked in front. "It's our family," Luna explained seriously. "That's you, and that's Tank, and that's me. We live together now." Maya studied the drawing, feeling her throat tighten. A month ago she would have cried at such simple innocence. Now she simply memorized every detail, understanding how precious normal moments were when you'd learned how quickly they could be stolen. "It's beautiful, baby," Maya said, hanging the drawing behind the bar where everyone could see it. Several customers smiled at the gesture, not knowing they were looking at a declaration of war, a promise that anyone who threatened this makeshift family would face consequences beyond imagination. Rosie emerged from the kitchen, her weathered face softening when she saw Luna. "There's my little artist. I saved you some of those dinner rolls you like." As Luna chatted with Rosie about tigers and motorcycles, and whether teddy bears could learn to drive, Maya found herself studying the tavern with new eyes. This place had been her refuge for years, a simple job serving simple people who wanted nothing more than cold beer and somewhere to forget their troubles. She'd thought it was enough once. Now it felt like visiting a museum of her former life. The woman who'd worried about tip money and her mother's medical bills was a stranger to her, someone she remembered fondly but could never be again. The transformation had burned away everything non-essential, leaving only what was necessary to protect the people she loved. "You're different here," Tank observed quietly while Luna was distracted. "Like you're visiting instead of belonging." Maya nodded, surprised by his perceptiveness. "I needed to see if I could still do this. Pour drinks, make small talk, pretend the biggest threat in the room is someone getting too drunk, but it's like wearing clothes that don't fit anymore." "And Luna? The apartment upstairs?" Maya glanced at their daughter, because that's what Luna was now, officially and permanently, since the adoption papers had been finalized yesterday. The child was teaching Rosie how to draw motorcycle wheels, her laughter bright and uninhibited. "Luna likes visiting here too," Maya said carefully, "but home isn't a place anymore. Home is us, wherever we choose to be." Tank smiled, understanding perfectly. They'd talked about this, leaving Newark, finding somewhere Luna could grow up, without the shadow of what had happened here. A small town, maybe, where Tank could open a legitimate garage and Maya could teach the child to be brave and kind and fierce when necessary. "Ready to go home?" Tank asked Luna, who nodded eagerly while clutching her new crayon masterpiece. As they prepared to leave, Maya realized she wasn't sad about saying goodbye to Rosie's. This place had served its purpose. It had brought her Luna, shown her what she was capable of becoming. But that chapter was finished now. Outside, Luna insisted on riding Tank's motorcycle while it was parked, pretending to drive to their new house in the mountains. Maya watched her daughter play, marveling at how quickly children could heal when they felt truly safe. 3 weeks ago, she'd been a barmaid who found a traumatized child in a dumpster. Now she was something unprecedented. A mother, a partner, a woman who discovered that love could transform you into exactly what your family needed, regardless of the cost. The return was complete. Maya Chen had come home to herself, the new beginning. 6 months later, Maya stood in the doorway of their kitchen, watching Tank teach Luna how to flip pancakes at the stove of their cabin in the Adirondack Mountains. Morning light streamed through windows that overlooked pine forests and a lake so clear you could see the bottom 20 feet down. No industrial smokestacks, no sirens, no shadows where threats could hide. "Higher!" Luna giggled as Tank launched a pancake toward the ceiling, catching it perfectly in the pan. "Do it again!" "Your turn, kiddo," Tank said, guiding her small hands on the spatula handle. "Remember what Maya taught you, confidence and commitment." Maya smiled at hearing her own words reflected back. She'd been teaching Luna more than cooking techniques lately. Self-defense basics disguised as games, how to read people's intentions, when to trust her instincts about danger. The child would grow up knowing how to protect herself, but hopefully never needing to use those skills. The adoption certificate hung framed above their fireplace, making official what their hearts had known from that first night in Maya's apartment. Luna Chen Volkov had 2 last names now, 2 fierce protectors, and a future stretching ahead without the shadow of her first 4 years. Maya's phone buzzed, a text from Rosie with a photo of the tavern's new bartender, a cheerful college kid who kept asking about Maya's cocktail recipes. "Miss you," the message read. "But you look happy in the mountains." Rosie was right. Maya studied her reflection in the kitchen window, noting how her face had softened around the edges, while her eyes remained alert and watchful. She'd found balance. The protective instincts that had transformed her in Newark now channeled into building something instead of destroying it. "Maya," Luna called, holding up a perfectly golden pancake. "Look what I made." "Beautiful, baby," Maya said, joining them at the stove. Tank's arm came around her waist automatically, a gesture that still made her marvel at how naturally they'd become a family. "What should we do after breakfast?" "Fishing," Luna announced. And then Tank promised to show me how to change motorcycle oil. Maya raised an eyebrow at Tank, who shrugged sheepishly. "Basic mechanical knowledge is important. At 4 years old, it's never too early to understand how engines work," Tank said solemnly, then grinned when Luna nodded in serious agreement. They'd established routines here that felt both ordinary and miraculous. Tank's garage in town was thriving. Mountain folks appreciated quality motorcycle and small engine repair, and his reputation for honest work had spread quickly. Maya had started substitute teaching at the local elementary school, discovering she had patience for children and a gift for making complicated subjects understandable. But the most profound change was Luna herself. The silent, traumatized child who'd hidden in a dumpster was becoming confident and curious, quick to laugh and unafraid to ask questions. She still had nightmares occasionally, but they came less frequently now. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a child psychologist in the nearby town, said Luna's recovery was remarkable, a testament to feeling truly safe for the first time in her life. After breakfast, they walked down to the lake where Tank had built a small dock. Luna practiced casting her fishing line while Maya watched the water's surface, finding peace in its stillness. Newark felt like another lifetime now, a necessary crucible that had forged them into who they needed to become. "Do you miss it?" Tank asked quietly, while Luna was focused on her fishing. "The excitement, the intensity?" Maya considered the question honestly. Part of her would always carry the tactical awareness, the readiness to become dangerous if necessary. But the constant vigilance that had consumed her in Newark had settled into something more sustainable, protective without being paranoid. "I miss feeling essential," she admitted. "Like every choice mattered life or death. But this," she gestured toward Luna, who was explaining to her teddy bear why fish lived underwater. "This is better. This is what we fought for." Tank nodded, understanding. They'd both struggled with the transition from crisis to normalcy. But gradually they'd learned to find meaning in smaller moments. Luna's first day of preschool, teaching her to ride a bicycle, the ordinary domestic rhythms that most families took for granted. As evening approached, they returned to the cabin for Luna's bedtime routine. The child insisted on reading to them now, proudly displaying her growing vocabulary. Tonight's selection was a picture book about a brave little rabbit who protected her forest friends from danger. "Just like you protected me," Luna said matter-of-factly to Maya as she closed the book. "When the bad men wanted to hurt me, you stopped them." Maya's throat tightened. They'd never discussed the specifics of what happened in Newark, but Luna understood more than they'd realized. "That's what families do," Maya said softly. "We protect each other." Luna nodded solemnly, then brightened. "And tomorrow we're going fishing again." After Luna fell asleep, Maya and Tank sat on their porch, watching stars emerge over the mountains. The silence here was different than Newark's, not empty but full of possibility. They'd built something unprecedented in these mountains, a family forged from violence but sustained by love, a future earned through sacrifice but rooted in hope. Maya Chen had found a Hell Angel's daughter in a dumpster and discovered her own capacity for transformation. Now she was home, finally and completely, in a life worth every choice that had brought them here.